In just a few years, one country has bought its way into almost every sport you love. The most famous footballer alive, signed, and flown in. Golf, turned into a fireworks show. Formula One, screaming through the desert at midnight. The biggest fights in boxing, moved to Riyadh. Tennis, wrestling, and soon the World Cup itself. One country, in under a single decade. And here's the part that makes no sense. A lot of what they are buying loses money, on purpose. So why keep spending? Follow the money, and the answer gets much bigger than sport. For a lot of people, it started with a football club. Newcastle United, one of the oldest clubs in England. For years its fans watched it fade, starved of money, going nowhere. Then, in 2021, salvation arrived, and the fans poured into the streets. But their new owner wasn't a billionaire, it was a government. Newcastle United is now about 85% owned by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. The first line on a very long receipt. And here is the part that makes no sense. Almost none of it makes money. So why would one of the richest funds on earth spend billions, on purpose, to lose it? To understand that, you have to follow the oil. This is Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, a young ruler with a deadline. His country was built on oil, but the oil will not last forever. So in 2016 he launched a plan called Vision 2030. A bet to build a new economy before the old one runs dry. And to place that bet, he controls one of the largest pools of money on the planet. The Public Investment Fund, an estimated $1.2 trillion, bigger than the entire yearly economy of most countries on Earth. The man who signs the checks is Yasser Al-Rumayyan. He turns up in every room where a deal gets done. But Saudi Arabia isn't one buyer, it's several arms of one state. The fund, the state oil company, the entertainment authority, the government. Keep them straight, because mixing them up is where most of the myths begin. First, the greatest star money could rent. Cristiano Ronaldo, signed to a Saudi club for a reported $200 million a year. Then the rest of a league, Benzema, Neymar and more pulled into the Saudi Pro League in 2023. The fund took control of its 4 biggest clubs. Then they came for golf. A brand new tour called 54, funded, by estimates, to the tune of $6 billion. A boxing super fan named Turki Al-Sheikh bought the sport's biggest nights. Through Riyadh season, he hands fighters the richest purses in the game. Tennis put the fund's name on the world rankings themselves. Their state oil company's logo went onto Formula One, and onto FIFA. But be precise here, they didn't buy Formula One, or FIFA, or wrestling. They sponsor them, or they host them. Ownership and influence are not the same thing. Put it together, though, and the map of global sport starts to look like this. And then like this. And then, the biggest prize of all. In December 2024, Saudi Arabia was awarded the 2034 World Cup, uncontested, after the only rival withdrew. By now the disclosed bill for sport alone was around $8.5 billion, an estimate, and not counting the stadiums still to come. Now, you'd expect the sports establishment to resist all this. For a while, it did. When the money came for golf, even the game's biggest names knew exactly who they'd be dealing with. Phil Mickelson said it out loud. A horrible record on human rights, he said. Knowing all of it, why would he even consider it? He signed anyway. And then, the establishment blinked. In June 2023, the PGA Tour and the Saudi fund announced they would shake hands. The crusade had become a negotiation. But here is the part the outrage usually skips. It was a framework to talk, not a done deal. 2 years later, it still isn't one. The tour later rejected a reported $1.5 billion offer. A US Senate panel alleged the fund negotiated partly to avoid legal discovery. So this isn't a simple story about a sellout. It's a story about the price of principles, and about the rest of us. Because it takes a buyer, a seller, and a crowd happy to look away. Money can rent a striker. The harder question is what it can buy a country. Critics have a word for it: sportswashing. Using the games you love to soften how the world sees you. The idea is to make you look at the stadium, instead of the record. Rights groups document executions, jailed dissidents, and the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Buy enough spectacle, the theory goes, and the world watches that instead. Except, and this is the twist, researchers aren't sure it even works. Every purchase buys attention, and attention brings scrutiny. Khashoggi's name trends every single time they buy something new. So maybe they spent billions to change how you feel, and mostly changed how much you notice. Or maybe the audience was never you at all. Maybe it's the 60% of Saudis under 35, a young country that wants jobs, and something to cheer for at home. Maybe it's a nation trying to buy its own future. So which is it? Image, economy, or power? Whatever the answer, every spectacle is built by someone. The stadiums, the cities, the events, raised by armies of migrant workers. In neighboring Qatar, the last Gulf nation to host a World Cup, a newspaper counted the dead. 6,500 migrant workers, from 5 countries, died in the decade after Qatar won its bid. How many were tied to World Cup work is disputed, but the number is real, and it was once people. None of it shows in the seats. And then, something almost no one predicted. The buyer started selling. The fund is set to end its funding of 54 golf after the 2026 season. It's in talks to sell part of Newcastle. A winter sports festival was scrapped. After roughly $6 billion, the golf experiment is being quietly wound down. But be careful with the word collapse. This isn't a collapse, it's a recalculation, by people who can afford to be wrong. And the fan in Newcastle, still cheering, still, somewhere, a little uneasy. So look again at where we started. What did they actually buy? They didn't buy the stadiums, they bought your attention. And maybe attention was the one thing all that money couldn't keep. So the next time a country you can barely place on a map sponsors the thing you love, ask who's paying, and what they'd rather you didn't look at. What else are you cheering for, without ever asking who paid?